Pokémon Legends Arceus delivered a brand new experience for anyone who played the original mainline games like myself. It gave us new ways of interacting and exploring within the game, something that I personally believe it was crying out for. What kids didn't want to roam around a world filled with wild Pokémon in their natural habitats, discovering new species, catching them, and training them up to be the most powerful trainer in the region? When Legends was announced, it gave us hope that maybe this was the game to provide us with that experience. It flaunted a ton of new gameplay features and bragged about the vast new region of Hisui. So the question is, does it live up to the expectations it set? This video is going to be looking at the game from a variety of angles to determine how good Legends actually is. So without further ado, let's get right into it. We'll kick things off looking at debatably the most important factor of any game, the gameplay. Legends is a semi-open world RPG game, meaning that whilst you can roam around as much as you please whilst exploring Hisui, you are limited to 5 main areas within the game. Despite this limitation, it really isn't an issue, as you unlock each of the 5 areas one by one as you rank up and progress through the game, which means that you don't hang around in a specific area for too long unless you choose to. Each of the areas have their own theme, whether it be Cobalt Coastlands with its close proximity to the sea, or Coronet Highlands all the way up in the mountains. They all offer an array of new Pokémon to catch based on their location. It makes for a very engaging experience as you're constantly unlocking new areas and discovering new and rare Pokémon. Each area is also a very respectable size, with there being plenty of different locations in them to explore. It finally gives the player a feeling of being in a world of Pokémon, rather than being restricted to specific routes between cities. One of the main things that adds to this experience are the overworld spawns of every single Pokémon. No longer do you have to wander into tall grass to encounter a random Pokémon. They'll simply be walking around you as you make your way through the region. Seeing a variety of species all existing in their own habitat gives the game an immersive feeling, as if you're really travelling through Hisui and encountering them all naturally. This is something that the old school Pokémon fanatics have wanted for a while now, especially as the mainline games are now being produced for the Nintendo Switch, which has far more capabilities than previous handheld consoles. It feels as if this game has finally utilised the full potential of the Switch, and given fans the experience we all knew was possible. One other thing that I do think really adds to the realism is the scale of the world and the characters in it compared to the Pokémon. Everything is proportioned properly. When you find a Spheal on the beaches of Cobalt Coastlands, it's the exact size you'd expect it to be. Alternatively, when you face off against a legendary Pokémon such as Dialga, they're suitably massive. The movement of your character has also been altered drastically, but in a good way. You can now roll away from attacks and walk around during battles, again making the game feel a bit more real. I especially like the dodging feature as it makes interactions with Pokémon a lot more exciting. Seeing a certain wild Pokémon will attack you if you get too close, you can often find yourself in a spot of trouble if they gang up on you. The use of this movement definitely comes in handy when this is the case, as it's the easiest and quickest way to avoid attacks. Another good way to do this is by mounting a ride Pokémon. These add a lot to the gameplay as they allow you to travel across land or water much quicker. Dashing on a Weirdeer's back or gliding through the air with Braviary allows you to reach new areas of the map, or just get from A to B sooner. You unlock each different mount as the game progresses, so you can always go back to areas that you might have explored extensively on foot, and now explore the higher up places and islands surrounded by water, giving it a whole new dimension. The battling mechanics have stayed somewhat the same, which is a little bit disappointing. Legends still operates on a turn-based system, but have added a couple of features to innovate. Every Pokémon now has the opportunity to master a move that they know, which will allow them to use that move in an agile or strong style. This either results in them using the move quicker, often giving them an extra turn afterwards, or hitting harder with it, which then allows the opponent to have 2 turns. This is all calculated on speed though, meaning that if you have an extremely fast Pokémon versus a very slow one, the strong style move may not result in them getting an extra turn, and so on. Unfortunately, it can be a bit broken, with opponent Pokémon sometimes having multiple turns in a row before you can even do anything, especially when you're facing more than one of them. This is probably the only issue that I have with the general gameplay in Legends, but it is quite a big one. Moving on to the graphics in Legends Arceus, they're largely adequate. The art style is much more similar to other games like Legends of Zelda, but not quite as crisp. The colours aren't as vibrant and the characters don't really look as good. However, this is still a step up from the previous titles such as Sword and Shield and definitely Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. It now feels like a proper console game, but it does still have a long way to go. One of the biggest issues within Legends is the render distance. It loads like a Minecraft world, which is pretty poor. Even Pokémon can appear out of nowhere whilst you're flying around. It's less than ideal. This causes moving objects from far away to stagger and lag, which produces some GameCube-like gameplay. On top of that, the cutscenes aren't really blockbuster, with many of them just being slow-moving scenery whilst NPCs talk with speech bubbles. It can make the game feel very slow at times, which is odd because some aspects of the game look great, such as the frenzied Pokemon when they emerge, or Giratina when it attacks you. It's a real mixed bag of design throughout, which leads me on to the next point. The scenery in each area is either really intricate and interesting, or mundane and repetitive. You either get beautifully designed locations, or just acres of grass and rocks. That being said, exploring this region is still a ton of fun, as I believe it makes it a little bit more realistic having some areas that are just large sections of land, as that is very much the case in real life, and it makes the more interesting places stand out more and worth finding. Where I do think this game has excelled is in its battle animations. Pokemon don't just stand there like they used to, they actually look ready to fight, and their moves look great too. Moves like Hyper Beam, Ice Beam and Flamethrower all look exactly how you would imagine they would, and that's honestly great. All in all, Pokemon has never really been about the graphics, it's more about the gameplay, but I do feel that new players to the franchise won't be too impressed with the quality. Pokemon Legends Arceus has a pretty solid main storyline, with the general premise being that the main character falls out of a space-time rift and is thrown back years in the past, before Pokemon were commonly owned by trainers, and where Sinnoh was still called Hisui. There are barely any towns or villages, with only Jubilife being recognised from the Sinnoh games. You're found by the Pokemon professor of the region and are quickly rescued and taken to Jubilife. Then from there, you have to prove your worth to the Galaxy Clan by becoming a Survey Corps member and seeking out to complete the Pokédex to aid their research. Along the way, you end up quelling the frenzy of 5 noble Pokemon, and eventually are tasked with returning Hisui back to its old self after a space-time rift takes over. It takes a fairly long time to play through, with there being a ton of stuff to do along the way. I wouldn't say it's the strongest story, but it is a nice change up from the standard 8 gyms then Elite 4 model. You'll be introduced to an array of NPCs that all have a role to play in your adventure, a lot of which are based off of characters from the Gen 4 games, such as Commander Kamado being a reference to Professor Rowan, and Volo being a nudge to the Sinnoh champion Cynthia. There are a load more comparisons, but I'll leave you to notice them yourselves. One thing that I love about this game is that it puts a huge emphasis on the Pokédex, with the key method of progression in the game's star ranks firmly being based around completing research on as many different species as possible. It's the first time that I've actually cared about doing this, as I usually just build a team of 6 that would obliterate any trainer that I come across. It also helps that to catch Arceus in the post-game, you need to have caught all 242 Pokemon. A lot of people have complained about the grind aspect of the game, as it involves catching numerous of the same Pokemon and leveling up their research level by seeing it use certain moves and catching them at different times of day. This can definitely get a bit tedious, especially if you set out to do this in one go. The grind aspect is saved a little bit by the new features of the game, mass outbreaks and space-time distortions. Mass outbreaks allow you to encounter multiple of the same Pokemon in a specific location, with an increased chance of finding a shiny version of that Pokemon. These occur completely at random and could be any Pokemon outbreaking, which means you can play for hours on end and not get bored, whilst also completing research tasks and potentially catching new Pokemon. The space-time distortions are less frequent, but more exciting. It is a zone marked out on the map which forms at random whilst you're playing, and lasts for around 10 minutes. Whilst in it, you can catch a variety of rare Pokemon that wouldn't usually spawn in that area. I don't think that these features prevent the game from being too grindy, but they certainly do help. To summarise, Pokemon Legends Arceus is a much needed change to the usual Pokemon formula. It's actually the most fun I've had in a Pokemon game for years, and might be up there with the best games they've ever released. While it certainly isn't perfect, with it having some pretty bad issues graphically and some mechanics that need addressing, it's innovative and exciting, allowing players who have played Pokemon for years to play and enjoy the game in a totally different way. Maybe this game was more enjoyable for me as I used to wish that there was a game just like this when I was younger, but I honestly think that it's objectively fun. With the amount of in-game content to complete and explore, you can play for hours and never really feel like it's getting stale. If I was to give you my honest opinion on whether this game is worth it, I'd say absolutely. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing to the channel, and make sure to let us know about your adventures in Hisui in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.